The massive circular chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with the usual mix of pride and prejudice. 12 crystalline platforms floated in a perfect circle, 11 of them occupied by the most feared warrior races in the known universe. The 12th platform, slightly lower than the others, held the human delegation. Ambassador Thomas Reed stood quietly, his plain black uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate battle armor worn by the other representatives. He watched as the council leader, a towering figure covered in natural armor plates, banged his ceremonial warhammer against the floating platform. "The Council of Warriors convenes," the leader announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Let the monthly display of battle achievements begin." One by one, the warrior races stepped forward to share their tales. The rock-skinned mountain-born described their latest conquest of a rebellious mining colony. The scaled warriors of the Eternal Flame boasted about their victory over space pirates. Each story was filled with acts of personal bravery, direct combat, and glorious battle. When it was Earth's turn, Reed simply presented a data tablet. Humanity has successfully evacuated 3 colonies from the path of an approaching solar storm. 0 casualties. 0 ships lost. The chamber filled with barely contained laughter. The council leader shook his head. Again, the humans retreat. "Tell us, Ambassador Reed, does your species know any other strategy besides running away?" Reed maintained his calm expression. "We'd prefer to call it a strategic withdrawal, Council Leader. The colonies are safe and will return once the danger has passed." "Typical human cowardice," rumbled the mountain-born representative. "In our culture, we would have stood our ground and fought the solar storm head-on." "An interesting tactical choice," Reed replied diplomatically, knowing it was physically impossible to fight a solar storm. But there was no point in arguing. The council had made up its mind about humans long ago. The meeting continued with various reports about territorial disputes and military patrols, until a junior aide rushed into the chamber. The small 4-armed creature carried a glowing data crystal that pulsed with urgent red light. "Honored Council," the aide squeaked, "our deep space monitors have detected something unusual." The council leader grabbed the crystal and projected its contents into the center of the chamber. A holographic map appeared, showing a distant sector of space. At its center, a harsh red dot pulsed angrily. "We've detected an ancient signal," the aide explained. "It's coming from planet XT-2991, a death world with radiation levels that exceed safe limits by a factor of 500. The chamber erupted in excited murmurs. Ancient signals meant ancient technology, and ancient technology meant power. But the radiation levels gave even the proudest warrior pause. "Our instruments show the signal is growing stronger," the aide continued. "It appears to be some kind of automated distress beacon. The radiation seems to be increasing as well." The council leader's eyes gleamed. "This is a perfect opportunity for one of our races to prove their superior courage. Who will volunteer to investigate this signal and claim the glory?" The chamber fell silent. The mountain-born representative suddenly became very interested in checking his armor. The warriors of the Eternal Flame mumbled something about scheduled ritual combat that couldn't be postponed. One by one, each warrior race found a reason why they couldn't possibly take on this particular mission. The radiation would interfere with their natural armor. Their shift shields weren't rated for such conditions. Their religious beliefs prevented them from approaching death worlds during this particular celestial alignment. As the excuses piled up, Reed studied the holographic data carefully. He noted the radiation patterns, calculated exposure risks, and reviewed the signal's characteristics. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Earth will investigate the signal," he said quietly. The chamber erupted in laughter again, even louder than before. "You?" The council leader scoffed. "The cowards of the galaxy? You'll probably turn around at the first sign of danger." Reed smiled slightly. "Perhaps, but at least we'll be careful enough to survive long enough to retreat." The council leader waved his hand dismissively. "Fine. Let the humans embarrass themselves. When they inevitably flee, we can assign this mission to 2. He trailed off, realizing no one else had volunteered. As Reed left the chamber to contact Earth Command, he couldn't help but think that sometimes being called a coward wasn't such a bad thing. After all, you had to be alive to be called anything at all. Captain Robert Miller stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Cautious Victory, reading the mission brief for the third time. The ship's name had earned quite a few laughs from the warrior races, but he didn't mind. It perfectly described humanity's approach to space exploration. "Run the radiation numbers again," he ordered his science officer, Lisa Brown. She nodded, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "Already did it twice, Captain," she replied. "The readings are off the charts, but our new shields should hold, if we're careful." The word careful brought a slight smile to Miller's face. That single word had earned humanity the mockery of the entire Galactic Council. While other races bragged about charging into battle, humans had spent centuries perfecting their safety protocols. A communication alert flashed on the main screen. It was another transmission from the Council. "Patch it through," Miller sighed, already expecting more ridicule. The Council leader's massive form filled the screen. Behind him, several other warrior race representatives watched with amused expressions. "Captain Miller," the leader's voice boomed, "we're sending you the latest data on planet XT-2991. The radiation levels have increased another 15% since yesterday. Surely now you'll withdraw your volunteer status." Miller studied the new data carefully. "Thank you for the update, Council Leader. We'll adjust our approach accordingly." "Adjust your retreat, you mean?" someone shouted from the background, causing several alien warriors to laugh. Miller ignored the jibe. "Our preparations are almost complete. We've developed specialized radiation shields, programmed our scout drones, and mapped out a careful approach vector." Drones. The Council leader scoffed. Real warriors face danger personally. The mountain-born would charge straight to the signal source. "With all due respect," Miller replied, "the mountain-born declined this mission, as did everyone else." That caused an uncomfortable silence in the Council chamber. Miller continued, "We'll reach the planet in 6 hours. Our mission updates will be transmitted automatically. If you're still there to send them," someone muttered before the transmission cut off. Miller turned to his crew of 20, each chosen for their expertise and attention to detail. "Final equipment check. I want every radiation suit tested twice. All drone systems at 100%. No shortcuts." The next few hours were filled with methodical preparation. While warrior races might have spent the time boasting or holding combat tournaments, the humans triple-checked their equipment, ran simulations, and refined their approach plan. "Captain," called out Mark Turner from the sensor station, "I'm picking up other ships approaching the system." Miller checked the readings. 3 vessels were following them at a distance, observer ships from different warrior races. "They're coming to watch us fail," Lisa said, shaking her head. "Then we'll have to disappoint them," Miller replied, "by succeeding." As they entered the outer edges of the XT-2991 system, the ship's sensors began screaming warnings. The radiation levels were even higher than reported. The planet ahead glowed an angry red in their view screen. "Radiation shields at maximum," reported the engineering officer. "But they're holding steady." Miller nodded, launched the first wave of drones. "Let's see what we're dealing with." 10 small drones shot out from the ship, their specialized sensors probing the deadly environment. The data they sent back was disturbing. The radiation wasn't natural. It showed patterns that suggested it was being generated deliberately. "The signal's getting stronger," Lisa reported. "But there's something odd about it. The pattern. It's like it's testing us." A new transmission from the Council interrupted them. This time, it was the mountain-born representative. "Your drones have proved what we suspected. The radiation is artificial. Now is the time for bold action. Turn back, humans, and let true warriors handle this." Miller looked at the mountain-borne ship on his scanner, safely positioned at the edge of the system. And will you be leading this bold charge? We are merely observing for now, the warrior replied uncomfortably, gathering intelligence. Of course, Miller said politely. Well, we'll continue our cowardly approach of not getting ourselves killed. Cautious victory out. He turned back to his crew. Status report on the second wave of drones. Ready, Captain, Lisa replied. And I've modified their sensors based on the first wave's data. Miller settled into his command chair, watching the deadly planet grow larger on their screen. Being called a coward was a small price to pay for keeping his crew alive. And something told him this mission would need every bit of caution they could muster. Take us in, he ordered. Nice and slow. The bridge of the cautious victory was silent except for the steady beeping of sensors. Through the main viewport, Planet XT-2991 dominated the view, its surface a swirling mass of angry red storms. Third wave of drones reporting in, Lisa announced, her eyes fixed on the readings. They've mapped a relatively safe corridor through the radiation. But Captain, the numbers are strange. Captain Miller moved to her station. Strange how? The radiation levels, they form a pattern. It's like a tunnel leading straight to the signal source, almost as if someone wants us to follow it, Miller finished. He'd seen enough traps in his career to recognize one. The communication system crackled. The observer ships were broadcasting again, this time on all frequencies so they couldn't be ignored. Look at them, came the booming voice of the eternal flame warrior. Sending machines to do a warrior's job. Where it is your honor. Lisa muted the transmission with a tired gesture. That's the 6th time they've called us cowards in the last hour. I'm starting to think they're compensating for something. They're nervous, Miller said quietly. Notice how none of them have moved closer. Even their observation ships are staying at maximum safe distance. The engineering officer raised his hand. Captain, I've finished analyzing the drone data. The radiation tunnel. It's not natural. Something's generating it, manipulating the deadly radiation into a specific path. And we're supposed to just charge right down it, Miller nodded. Like proper warriors would. He turned to his crew. New plan. We're going to disappoint everyone who's watching. Launch the tunneling drones. The crew smiled. While the observer ships had been busy mocking them, the humans had been assembling their real strategy. 4 larger drones detached from the cautious Victory's hull. Instead of flying into the radiation tunnel, they moved to its edges and began boring into the planet's crust. What is this cowardice? Came another transmission from the observers. The path to glory lies before you. Miller let them rant. The tunneling drones were sending back their first readings, and the data confirmed his suspicions. Below the surface, the radiation levels were much lower. Just as I thought, he said. Whatever's generating this radiation is focusing it upward, almost like it's trying to encourage a direct approach and discourage a careful one, Lisa added. The radiation pattern would kill anything that tried to brute force their way through. The next few hours were tedious but crucial. The tunneling drones carved a safe path through the planet's crust, well below the deadly radiation storm above. The observer ships continued their mockery, but Miller noticed their taunts were becoming less frequent. They're worried, Lisa said during a quiet moment. They know they couldn't do this. None of their warrior cultures would have the patience. Finally, the drones reached their target area. The ancient signal was coming from directly above them, but now they had a safe approach vector. Final equipment check, Miller ordered. Every suit sealed and tested. Every scanner calibrated. We do this by the book. The crew prepared methodically, each movement practiced and precise. Through the observation feeds, Miller could see the warrior races getting increasingly agitated. The cowards dig holes like rodents. One warrior shouted. They dishonor themselves. Funny, Miller muttered. I don't see them volunteering to show us the proper way. The cautious Victory descended carefully into the tunnel their drones had created. As they got closer to the signal source, the ship's sensors began picking up more details. "Captain," Lisa called out, her voice tense. "I'm detecting an enormous energy signature. Whatever's down there, it's big. And it's old. Really old." "How old?" "Older than any civilization we know of, including all the warrior races combined." Miller nodded slowly. "And it's still working after all this time. Whoever built this, they weren't focused on glory. They were focused on making something that would last." The ship's lights suddenly flickered. Above them, the radiation storms intensified, as if reacting to their presence. "We're being scanned," Lisa reported. "Something knows we're here." "Good," Miller replied, "because we're about to meet it. But we'll do it our way. Careful, cautious, and alive." As the ship continued its careful descent, Miller couldn't help but wonder, what kind of ancient civilization would create a test that could only be passed by those willing to ignore the obvious path? They were about to find out. The cautious Victory settled into a vast underground chamber, its lights revealing smooth metallic walls that seemed to drink in the illumination. Captain Miller studied the ancient architecture through the ship's cameras. Everything about the structure spoke of precise engineering and careful planning. "Radiation levels?" he asked. "Nearly zero down here," Lisa replied, sounding surprised. "Whatever's generating the storms above, it's deliberately keeping them away from this chamber." Miller nodded. "Suit up. Standard exploration protocol." The crew prepared their radiation suits despite the low readings. No one complained about the extra precaution. It was what had kept them alive this long. Through their communication system, they could hear the warrior races still watching from orbit. They'd hidden themselves underground. Came the disgusted voice of the mountain-born observer. "Like insects." "Funny," Miller muttered as he checked his suit seals. "I don't hear them volunteering to take the honorable route through the radiation storm." The exploration team consisted of 6 crew members, each chosen for their specific expertise. They exited the ship through the main airlock, their boots touching the ancient floor with gentle thuds. "This metal," the team's materials expert said, scanning the floor, "I've never seen anything like it. It's absorbing all radiation, even background levels." They moved carefully through the chamber, their helmet lights revealing more details. The walls were covered in symbols, but they weren't like any language known to the Galactic Council. "Captain," Lisa called out, her light fixed on a particular section of wall. "You need to see this." The wall showed a series of images. They depicted various alien species, all clearly warrior races, charging into battle against some kind of dark energy. Each image showed the warriors being consumed by their own aggression. "It's a warning," Lisa said quietly. A deep humming suddenly filled the chamber. The floor beneath them lit up with lines of soft blue light, creating a path toward the center of the facility. "Motion sensors," someone suggested. "No," Miller replied, studying the pattern. "It's reading us somehow. Our approach, our caution, it's responding to that." They followed the light path, maintaining their careful pace despite the growing excitement of discovery. The chamber ahead opened into an enormous circular room. In its center, a column of swirling dark energy rose from floor to ceiling, contained within what looked like a glass tube. "Energy readings are off the charts," Lisa reported, checking her scanner. "But they're stable, controlled." More symbols lined the walls of this room. As they watched, the symbols began to glow, and a holographic image appeared in front of them. It showed a species none of them had ever seen before. Tall, slender beings with multiple arms and elongated heads. A voice spoke, not in sound but directly into their minds. "You who have reached this place through caution and wisdom, hear our warning. What you see before you is the Great Hunger, an entity that feeds on aggression and violence. It nearly destroyed our civilization before we learned the truth, that it could only be contained by those who rejected the path of warriors." The hologram showed scenes of an ancient war, where entire species were consumed not by the entity's power, but by their own aggressive attempts to fight it. We sacrificed ourselves to build this prison, the voice continued. Not through glorious battle, but through careful engineering and patient work. The radiation above is our final test. Those who try to force their way through are turned back. Only those who seek another way may reach this place. Miller looked at the containment system with new understanding. That's why the warrior races couldn't come here. Their very nature would have strengthened it. The containment system is failing, the voice warned. Our calculations showed it would last until someone worthy found this place. You have proven yourselves through your caution, your care, your refusal to take the obvious path of glory. The hologram showed technical diagrams of the containment system. The repairs needed are complex and dangerous. They require patience, precision, and most importantly, the ability to resist the entity's pull toward violence. Suddenly, alarms blared through their communication system. "Captain," came a shout from the ship. "The observer vessels, they're entering the atmosphere. They're saying they won't let humans claim the glory of this discovery." Miller looked at the containment system, then at his crew. And that's exactly the wrong thing to do. The dark energy in the column began to pulse, growing stronger as the warrior races approached. "How long until they reach us?" Miller asked. 10 minutes at their current speed. He turned to his team. "Then we have 10 minutes to figure this out before their warrior spirit makes everything much, much worse." The ancient voice spoke one final time. "Choose wisely. The future depends not on courage alone, but on the wisdom to know when not to fight." The dark energy within the containment field pulsed stronger with each passing second. Captain Miller watched as his crew studied the ancient technical diagrams, their helmet lights casting long shadows across the chamber floor. "Status report," he ordered, keeping his voice calm despite the growing crisis. Lisa looked up from her scanner. "The entity is growing stronger. The warrior ships approach. Their aggressive intent, it's feeding it somehow." Through their radio, they could hear the warrior race's battle cries as their ships descended through the radiation storm, taking heavy damage, but pushing through with sheer force. "Glory to the mountain-born," one ship broadcast. "The eternal flame fears nothing," came another call. With each boast, each aggressive thought, the dark energy swirled faster. Cracks began appearing in the ancient containment field. "They don't understand," Lisa said, her voice tight with worry. "Their very nature is making it worse." Miller touched the ancient wall, feeling slight vibrations through his gloved hand. "How long until containment fails?" "At this rate, minutes. The warrior race's approach is accelerating the degradation exponentially." The chamber shook as the first warrior ship forced its way into the tunnel system the humans had carefully created. They could hear the screech of tearing metal as the ship, too large for the passage, simply forced its way through. "Cowards," the mountain-born commander broadcast. "Hiding underground while glory awaits. We will show you how true warriors." The transmission cut off as a wave of dark energy pulsed through the chamber. The containment field cracked further, and for a moment, everyone felt a rush of pure aggression, a desire to fight, to prove their strength. "Don't give in to it," Miller shouted, recognizing the feeling for what it was. "That's what it wants. That's how it feeds." His crew nodded, forcing themselves to breathe slowly, to maintain their careful, methodical approach. The warrior races weren't so fortunate. The mountain-born ship, Lisa reported, checking the sensors. "They're turning on each other. The entity, it's amplifying their aggressive tendencies." Through their cameras, they could see the warrior ship's crew fighting among themselves, all thoughts of glory forgotten in a haze of pure violence. Another warrior ship broke through, this one belonging to the eternal flame. They lasted only seconds before succumbing to the entity's influence, their ship's weapons turning on their own allies. "Captain," Lisa called out urgently, "I think I understand the containment system. It's not just a prison. It's a dampening field. The ancient race didn't just trap the entity here. They built a system that could only be maintained through calm, precise actions. Miller looked at the failing containment field, then at his crew. So every aggressive action makes it stronger, Lisa finished, while calm, careful actions might help stabilize it. The chamber rocked with another explosion as more warrior ships arrived. Above them, the radiation storm had grown into a frenzy, matching the chaos of the battles now raging in the tunnel system. "Can we repair it?" Miller asked. Lisa studied the ancient diagrams. "Yes, but it's not just about technical skill. The repair process itself is a test. Any rush, any aggressive move, and it'll make things worse. We have to be perfectly calm, perfectly careful. Even with everything going to hell around us," Miller nodded. "We have to be what they've always mocked us for being: cautious." A massive explosion rocked the facility as two warrior ships destroyed each other. Dark energy leaked from the containment field like smoke, reaching toward the violence above. "Time to choose," Miller said to his crew. "We can run. There's still time to reach our ship. Or we can stay and fix this, knowing one wrong move, one moment of panic or aggression, could doom everything." His crew straightened, checking their equipment with practiced calm. No one moved toward the exit. "I thought so." Miller smiled behind his faceplate. "Lisa, explain the repair sequence. Everyone else, maintain positions and stay focused. Whatever happens, whatever we hear or feel, we move carefully, precisely." Above them, the warrior races continued their battle, unaware that their very nature was feeding the catastrophe. The humans worked silently, methodically, as the universe hung in the balance. Sometimes, Miller thought, the bravest thing you can do is resist the urge to be brave. Captain Miller's hands moved slowly over the ancient control panel, each motion deliberate and precise. Around him, chaos reigned as the warrior races continued their battle above, but his focus remained absolute. "First sequence complete," he said calmly. "Lisa." Through her helmet camera, he could see Lisa working on the opposite side of the containment field, her movements equally measured. "Second sequence starting now, Captain." "Everyone, remember to breathe slowly." The dark energy writhed within its failing prison, tendrils of pure aggression reaching out toward any hint of violent emotion. But where it touched the humans, it found no purchase. Their carefully controlled actions and calm minds gave it nothing to feed on. "Warning," came the ship's automated alert. "Multiple hull breaches detected in upper tunnel system. Warrior race vessels are destroying the support structure." Miller kept his breathing steady. "Let them. We focus on our task." The repair sequence required perfect timing from all 6 crew members. Each had to adjust their section of the containment field in perfect synchronization, but rushing would only make things worse. They moved like dancers in slow motion, each step calculated and calm. Above them, another explosion rocked the chamber. Through their comms, they could hear the warrior races succumbing one by one to the entity's influence. "For glory," someone shouted, followed by the sound of weapons fire. "You dare challenge the eternal flame," came another voice, rage-filled and distorted. With each violent outburst, the dark energy pulsed stronger, but instead of fighting it, the humans simply adjusted their movements to compensate for the shaking chamber. "Third sequence," Lisa called out, "starting in 3, 2, 1. They moved as one, each person touching specific points on the ancient machinery in a precise pattern. The containment field hummed, its cracks starting to seal where they worked. The warrior ships, their sensor operator reported quietly, They're all attacking each other now. The entity has complete control of them. Focus on your task," Miller reminded everyone. "Their choices are their own. We make ours." Hour after hour they worked, even as the battle raged above. When the entity tried to influence their minds with pulses of rage and aggression, they responded with breathing exercises they'd learned in basic training. When falling debris threatened their position, They calmly moved to safer spots without breaking the repair sequence. Final sequence approaching, Lisa announced. Captain, we'll need perfect synchronization. Miller nodded inside his helmet. On my mark, everyone. Remember your training. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. The chamber shook violently as the last warrior ship tore itself apart. The dark energy made one final push, filling the chamber with feelings of rage, violence, and glory in battle. But the humans stood firm. Their heartbeats remained steady. Their hands stayed true. Mark. 6 pairs of hands moved in perfect unison, completing complex patterns that had taken the ancient race centuries to develop. The containment field began to glow with a soft blue light, similar to the path that had guided them earlier. The dark energy fought against its prison, but with each careful movement from the humans, it lost more ground. The cracks in the containment field sealed completely. The pulses of rage grew weaker. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of precise, careful work, the entity was fully contained once again. The chamber grew quiet except for the soft hum of the restored machinery. Containment field at 100% stability, Lisa reported. The entity, it's sleeping again. Miller allowed himself a small smile. Ship status. The cautious victory is undamaged, but the warrior ships, the sensor operator paused. Total losses. They destroyed each other completely. The radiation storm above. Dissipating. Whatever the ancient race built here, we didn't just repair it, we improved it. The containment is stronger than ever. Miller looked at his crew, each of them exhausted but alive. Their cowardly approach, their safety protocols, their careful planning, their practiced calm, had saved not just themselves, but possibly the entire galaxy. Well done, everyone, he said quietly. Let's document everything properly before we leave. The Council will need to understand exactly what happened here. As they began their methodical documentation process, Miller reflected on how their greatest perceived weakness had turned out to be their greatest strength. The humans hadn't won through boldness or glory. They had won by being exactly what everyone mocked them for being. Cautious, careful, and smart enough to be afraid. The Galactic Council chamber looked very different now. Where once 12 platforms had floated in a perfect circle, now only 7 remained. The lost warrior race's platforms had been lowered in memory of their fallen ships. Captain Miller stood beside Ambassador Reed on the human platform, which no longer hung lower than the others. Before them, the surviving council members watched in silence as the mission recordings played. They saw everything. The careful approach through the tunnels, the discovery of the ancient facility, the warrior race's fatal charge, and the humans' methodical victory over the entity. When the recording ended, the chamber remained quiet for a long moment. The council leader, his battle armor now bearing visible scars from his ship's near destruction, finally spoke. "We called you cowards," he said, his voice heavy. "We mocked your caution, your endless safety protocols, your reluctance to fight." He paused, looking at the empty platforms. "We were wrong." Miller and Reed exchanged glances but remained silent. They had learned that sometimes the best response was no response at all. "Our greatest warriors," the council leader continued, "they fell not to an enemy they could fight, but to their own aggression. While we rushed to our doom, you moved with purpose. While we sought glory, you sought understanding." Lisa stepped forward, holding the data crystal containing their complete mission report. "The ancient race left us more than just a warning," she said. "They left us a choice. Every species eventually faces the same test, learning when not to fight." The council members leaned forward as she explained the entity's true nature. It wasn't just a prisoner in that facility. It was a mirror, reflecting and amplifying each species' worst aggressive tendencies. That's why the radiation shield could only be passed through patience, Lisa explained. Why the repair sequence required perfect calm. The entire facility wasn't just containing the entity. It was testing if species were ready to contain their own violent impulses. And we failed that test, the mountain-born representative said quietly. His once proud voice now carried a note of humility. Our own nature betrayed us. Ambassador Reed finally spoke. Not failed. Not yet. The test continues for every species, every day. The choice between aggression and restraint, between rushing in and stepping back, we all face it constantly. The council chamber stirred as maintenance robots began raising the human platform even higher, marking their new status in the galactic community. But Miller noticed something interesting. None of the surviving warrior races objected. We have reviewed your full report, the council leader announced, and we have come to a decision. The human approach to space exploration will become the new standard for all council races. Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber. The sane representatives who had once mocked human caution now nodded in approval. Furthermore, he continued, we request human assistance in developing new safety protocols for all council operations. We need to learn what you have always known, that true courage isn't about never feeling fear. It's about feeling fear and still doing what must be done, carefully and correctly. Miller watched as, one by one, the mighty warrior races set aside their ceremonial weapons. They weren't surrendering their strength, but rather learning to temper it with wisdom. The ancient race knew something we had forgotten, Lisa said, addressing the council. The hardest battle isn't against an enemy. It's against our own worst impulses. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stop, think, and choose not to fight. As the council session ended, Miller found himself looking at the empty platforms of the fallen warrior races. Their loss was tragic, but their sacrifice had taught the galaxy a priceless lesson. On their way out, the council leader stopped Miller. You know, he said thoughtfully, we never understood why humans named their ships so cautiously. But now I see the wisdom in it. Cautious victory. Because sometimes victory comes not from charging in, but from having the courage to hold back. Miller nodded. The hardest part of being cautious is enduring the mockery of those who don't understand why. But we'd rather be called cowards by the living than heroes by the dead. As they walked back to their ship, Miller reflected on how the galaxy had changed. The warrior races were learning to balance courage with caution. The council was adopting human safety protocols, and nobody, not a single voice in the galaxy, was calling humans cowards anymore. After all, true courage had never been about rushing into danger. It had always been about knowing when to step carefully.